raw and unscripted. KSU. Quick, tactical conversations from the heart of the powersports industry. In this business, time is torque. So hit the ignition, twist the throttle, and let's fire it up.
Week 2, Mark Sheffield, we're back. We're wearing the same thing. Probably looks familiar from last episode. Mark is probably currently in China as we're sitting here today, and this was uploaded, so we had to record a couple episodes the same day. But the focus today, Mark, is on the finance office. That's how we got started in this space at Vision AST. We focused highly on the finance space, and F&I, that's where we came from on the automotive side. So I'm super intrigued by this space in the powersports industry. I have some metrics that I pulled once again, but let's start with what matters most. What should dealers focus on in this space? I know there's so much opportunity from what I see and who I work with and dealers and agents alike. There's so much opportunity in the F&I office. So what do you think? What do they focus on? Top 4, daily, weekly, monthly? You're up.
I think a lot of dealers focus on PVR, per unit sold, whatever you want to call it. I think the only issue with that is that if you want to compare yourself to another dealer, you really need to know what the average selling price is. So a dealer who's at $800 a copy and they're selling 500cc motorcycles, they're rocking it. But you got a dealer that $500 a copy and all they're selling is new Defenders and new Rangers and new Mules, probably not doing so well. So I tend to look at F&I performance as a ratio of new unit sales dollars. And I think that to me is a comparable between different dealers. I like to look at the product mix. So what is the dealer selling? If a dealer is making half of their money out of reserve, then that's good, but there's still a lot of room opportunity for Gap, Tire and Wheel, maintenance, any of the other products that are out there, and especially ESC. And I like to look at the chargeback ratio. So there is a sweet spot in there. I think if a dealer's chargebacks are low or almost non-existent, they're probably not trying. But if they're high or too high, then a lot of times there are disclosure issues. So one of those things you got to dig in and figure out what's going on.
Let's dig into the ancillaries a little bit. What are your favorite ancillaries, or what could you recommend to a dealer who traditionally is selling, VSC and Gap, and they don't really have much ancillary offering? What do you think? What's most important?
You have to kind of figure out what the dealer is selling. A motorcycle dealer should be probably doing a higher rate of finance. And so here we're talking about Gap and Tire and Wheel. And, a lot of times I'll talk into a sales guy and I'll be like, how much construction is going on around here? How many houses are going up? How many nails and screws are on the road? You're doing your customer a disservice by not selling Tire and Wheel. If you're talking about dealers who are selling a lot of ORV products, then ESC to me is pretty important there. Battery can be a strong performer in some of those dealers as well. So it really just depends on the product that the dealer is actually selling. We do tend to find that a lot of finance managers kind of have their favorites, and so they're not really doing a good job of tailoring the presentation by customer. It's just here's what my favorites are, and here's what I tend to do, and that leaves a lot of money on the table.
Are you saying that a customer interview is pretty important for them to understand what the consumer is using that vehicle for? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. I would say that if the first time that a finance manager talks to the customer is when the customer is sitting down to do the paperwork, you probably already handicapped yourself by 30% of the opportunity there. So you're really missing out.
When do they introduce themselves? What's your go-to? When would you coach someone to a new F&I manager of this space? When would you say, hey, here's the perfect opportunity to go out and introduce yourself to the customer? What point in the process is that?
It can be as early as when the customer is actually sitting down with the salesperson for the first time, but at least at the latest should be after the customer has actually made a commitment and saying, yeah, this is the right vehicle at the right price. I'm ready to do it. Finance should be involved at that point in time.
Awesome. A couple quick metrics here. VSC, 43% penetration for Q2 we saw. That's number one product. Gap, 17%. And then number 3 was battery protection at about 12% penetration. But in general, the ancillary products we've seen in the past probably 6 to 9 months have increased 6 to 7% across the board. So I'm seeing a lot more ancillary sales. I think a lot of F&I professionals and dealers are seeing the importance of the full protection. I think what you said was awesome. Understand your environment. If there's construction going on, or look at the news here and there. Understand what's going on in your environment, in your city, and then sell according to that customer and their particular needs. I think that's awesome. Great advice. We just hit the 5.5 minute mark. Mark, double Mark. Leave us with some wisdom as we depart on episode 2 for the finance.
The only thing I would say is that, F&I, other people call it found income. There's some other non-professional terms that are utilized for that. So not gonna bring those up here. But, I think the key thing to understand is that in any dealership, you should be able to take your F&I dollars off the P&L and the dealership should still be profitable. Every department in the dealer should make money: sales, service, finance, and don't forget parts. But take those F&I dollars off the P&L, and if the company is still making money, then you've got a good solid business that will be able to withstand any of the downturns turns that potentially we're looking at in the future.
Love it. Awesome. Look forward to diving into service and parts in the next couple episodes. Mark, appreciate it once again. Let's keep rolling. KSU.
Appreciate you riding with us on Raw and Unscripted. KSU. We'll be back next week with more ways to rev up your dealership success. Until next time, keep the throttle wide open.